A very good day, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the first episode of MAIDS-GRID Talk Series in 2025. I'm Hannah. I'm a Ph.D. student in International Development Studies, and I'll be hosting for the whole sessions for today's talk. Not a lot, of course. I'm here with the director of the MAIDS-GRID program, MA and Ph.D. International Development Studies, Faculty of Political Science, Chulalongkorn University, Thailand. Ajahn Carl, thank you very much for making the time. So before we are going deeper into the discussions, I'll be just telling a little bit the initiative, the reason why we have this kind of program. So Ajahn Carl and everyone, we've been receiving a lot of questions, especially very basic questions actually, but fundamental curiosity from the people, especially prospective students, on what is actually international development studies. All right. So for the very first session and very first speaker, very humble to have Associate Professor Dr. Carl Middleton. So as I mentioned that Ajahn Carl or Dr. Carl is the director for the MAIDS-GRID program, MA and PhD in International Development Studies. And he's also serving as the director of CSDS or Center for Social and Development Studies, Faculty of Political Science, Chulalongkorn University, Thailand. All right, Ajahn Carl, I'll be heading over to you very shortly, but feel free to reintroduce yourself, of course, and probably followed by the questions, the very first questions. What is international development studies actually, and why this field is very important lately? What is unique about international development studies? Ajahn Carl, screen is yours.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Hannah, for organizing this, and I'm really happy to have the opportunity to answer questions today. And as she said, I mean, this is very fundamental questions. Like, why might students be interested to come and study international development studies, both as a field, and then potentially also to join us at the Faculty of Political Science at Chulalongkorn University in Thailand. So maybe begin with this very important question: what is international development studies as a field, and why is it important today? I mean, even the word studies implies that it's kind of a very interconnected field or interdisciplinary field. So in that sense, international development studies is wide-ranging, because understanding the concept and practice of development is also wide-ranging as well. Some of the ways that we could think about international development studies, one might be in terms of the geopolitics of development. So for example, in terms of international relations, trade, aid, investment. If we were having this discussion 15 or 20 years ago, we might be talking about the opportunities and challenges in globalization, the connecting of the world together. In the present day, we might also now be reflecting critically on fragmentations and the challenges of connectedness and its implications for development in different places around the world. International development also, you might sort of think about national development. You know, some students are very interested in what's happening in their countries. And again, like this, the field could look at this in very different ways. So for example, nation state formation, or the ways in which security is thought about, like traditional national security, but maybe closer to development studies is thinking about non-traditional security, like food security and so on, or even human security, shifting away from the security of the state and thinking about the citizens, the people in the country. I think also what we might think about in national development is also the duties of states to protect and promote human rights. But then also there's a very local meanings of development in international, even if say international development studies, everything really happens locally. So within the field of international development studies, in the way that we approach it on the program, it also includes concepts like community development, participatory development, how these ideas have changed over time and in different cultural and political contexts. If that's not enough, like across different scales, there's also very important questions about historical perspectives on development, such as the continuities and discontinuities of colonialism, which is very relevant in a region like Southeast Asia, where our program is based, all the way to very contemporary issues. So like that could be the challenges of climate change, or thinking about indigenous people rights, or migration, aging societies, recent shifts in geopolitics. So from the historical to the contemporary and the connections between them also falls under what we might think of as international development studies. And I think probably then say that international development studies has changed over time. They say that if you look at the history of the field, early ways of thinking about international development were like, okay, how does economic modernization take place? Like just economic growth, especially in an independence context, a post-colonial context. But I think nowadays, like the discussion is plural, pluriversal. There's a lot of discussion about kind of post-development. It doesn't mean replacing opportunities for things getting better in different ways, but breaking away from those kind of early traditions of kind of economic-centric and even human-centric thinking, and actually drawing out more very diverse ways of thinking about the meaning of development in different cultural contexts. I think it's also, we could say it's a field of study, but also a field of practitioners as well. So I think maybe we'll discuss a bit later on, like what do you study in international development? But you could say, well, it's definitely interdisciplinary, like for example, international relations, sociology, anthropology. But it's also a field that is full of practitioners. Those practitioners kind of range from social movement activists to development professionals to diplomats. So in that sense, international development studies brings a lot of diverse people together around a shared concern and dialogues on that. Why is it important? I think you also asked this. I mean, there's so many different ways of answering that, like whether it's a concern for human well-being, a concern for sustainability, questions about social and environmental justice or injustice and how to achieve justice. A lot of attention in development studies is about equity, including on inclusive societies and how to act on inequalities, like gender inequalities, for example. I mean, probably the short definition of why development studies is important is that it asks questions about how good change can be achieved. But that in itself is a very complicated question to answer, which is why we have international development studies.
All right, Ecological, very interesting explanations about international development studies. But speaking about the field itself, so Chulalongkorn University is not the only university offers this program, right? So we have a lot of a number of universities also offering the same field study or major international development studies. So I'm just wondering, like, if people are questioning what MAIDS-GRID program, International Development Studies at Chulalongkorn University offer, and what is our uniqueness, of course, from the perspective of the program itself, comparing to other university, what we offer actually to the students, Ajahn Carl?
Hey, also a very important question. So you can choose to study international development studies in many places, and there are many very good programs around the world, and I'd say that we partner with some of them. So there's good reasons to choose networks, not just individual programs. For our program, the MAIDS-GRID program at Chula, it was the first English language master's course in international development studies taught in Thailand. We have been in existence since 2003. So the program has a long track record now. It was originally established by the Center for Social Development Studies, which I also have the privilege of being the director of, that has a far longer history since the 1980s. And CSDS itself was established with a mission of connecting academic work to social engagement, societal engagement. And the original initiative of creating the Masters in International Development Studies was recognizing that educating the future generation of those that engage in international development studies, especially in a sort of critical way, was very important. So I'd say that the origin of our program is also a socially engaged international development studies program. As I said, there are many good international development studies programs around the world and in the region, including in Thailand. So why consider coming to Bangkok and to Chula? I mean, one reason is, I mean, the program itself is kind of geographically located very centrally to the region. So it means that students that come to study with us have an opportunity to be in Bangkok, which means kind of engaging in public events at Chula and Bangkok more widely. Like there's a very sort of vibrant scene of sort of practitioners and scholars and activists who are kind of debating different aspects of development. I think probably what I'd say one of the strongest reasons to come and study here is that, you know, often development studies has studied Southeast Asia. So why not be in Southeast Asia to understand the processes, the consequences, and the opportunities of development? So to kind of study here is the opportunity to also really understand from within how to think about the concepts and the practices of development. By joining our program, like obviously the lectures will connect you very much to the region. There'll also be the opportunity to join meetings and then to connect to regional expertise and experience. By also being in Bangkok, there's a lot of organizations based here that students can make connections to as well. So it allows students to kind of connect locally and regionally and globally to the organizations that have a presence here. Aside from that, I mean, Chulalongkorn University is among the leading universities in Thailand. For our development studies program, for development studies at Chula, I should say, we're very proud that we're ranked among the top 100 universities teaching international development studies globally, and we're #1 in Thailand. Aside from study, like the strict study side, living in Bangkok is a very vibrant and culturally rich city. There are many activities and events and places to explore. And then more broadly, Thailand is culturally diverse and offers many unique opportunities. Like whether you are Thai and planning to be in Bangkok to study or traveling from outside of Thailand, we definitely encourage that you are here to study, but also beyond that, you're here to experience a different culture, which is incredibly interesting and diverse across the country.
All right, Ajahn Carl. I think that's also part of my reason as well why studying this program. But in addition to that, I think I remember you highlight the interdisciplinary part of international development studies, and then you also say that the definitions of international development itself is changing. It's very dynamic. But how can you also try to elaborate how the MAIDS-GRID program is kind of align with the global development and challenge as well, Ajahn Carl?
Thanks. That's a really good question. I think, yeah, so I said at the beginning, and you're also highlighting, you know, the world is continually changing. And I think international development studies by its nature is trying to understand the changing context as it happens. It doesn't mean to just focus on the present. The history shapes the present and the possibilities of the future. So when we think about how the program aligns with global development challenges and emerging trends, we're kind of thinking both how we understand and learn from the past, and then are able to analyze the present. I mean, I could mention maybe the vision for MAIDS, because I think that maybe captures what the program is trying to do for our students. So we understand the vision for MAIDS as the MAIDS program as being an interdisciplinary graduate program that cultivates change makers who critically engage with development concepts and practices in Southeast Asia and the world. We aim that our graduate students can apply their development knowledge and skills to societal change while taking an ethical and grounded stand towards historical, contemporary, and future possibilities of development studies, including beyond anthropocentrism. You know, so within the program, we're always reflecting on what the program should be trying to achieve. The idea, for example, beyond anthropocentrism is recognizing that there's a growing momentum to not see development as just human-centric. So we're starting to really try and incorporate into our program thinking about these issues. What does development mean when we move beyond just thinking about humans as being the focus of development? So we then have kind of goals that we have that students will attain if they study on our program. Maybe I can run through those, but I think that also is helpful for the students to understand how we're trying to design the program for how they can build their skills and be empowered in the world beyond their study. So the outcomes for the students we hope will be achieved. One is that students will be able to analyze historical, contemporary, and future possibilities of development studies and really base that on critical thinking and engagement with the knowledge and theories of international development studies. Then the second goal is that students will be able to apply their knowledge in practice. Like we don't want students just to be strong in the classroom. We want the students to be able to take that knowledge and act on it. Third is that the students will be able to have research skills that they can ethically apply for new knowledge production in our field of development studies. So obviously, if you're joining a master's level program, then a part of that is building your own ability to study the world around us. So building your research skills is important. And I mean, especially obviously for a PhD program, like we have our PhD program, but also for the master's students. We also expect our students to be able to critically and conscientiously engage in debates about social and ecological justice in development studies. And so we also recognize that a lot of the questions around the meaning and practice of development is also a very public debate. So we want students to be able to feel that they can contribute to that debate. So then related to this is building communication, to be able to communicate their analysis to diverse audiences. And then lastly, that students should be able to work in diverse contexts to become a change maker. I feel very impressed by our students about how passionate they are and how they kind of conscientiously think about how they will contribute to forming the world around them. Yeah, so I think those are the sorts of things that we hope our students can achieve in addressing the global trends in development.
All right, Ecological, that's fascinating. I think we almost cover everything, the fundamental, the basic ones. What is international development studies? Even though we can, of course, elaborate more or further. But I think we need to,
yes.
Yeah, we need to jump to other questions because I'm sorry, I have to focus on two monitors because we got a lot of questions, honestly. So I think we can move to the another sections about curriculum and academic approach. When you mentioned about the other universities also offer the same quality, the same uniqueness of international development studies, but can you also tell us what are the core subjects and specializations over in the MAIDS-GRID program at our university at Ecological?
So we have 4 core courses that we teach, which are development theory and practice, research methods, globalization, and the politics of public policy. All of the students on the MAIDS program are expected to take those courses. And then also most of the students on the PhD program, unless they've studied that before, would be expected to take those core courses. Aside from that, as prospective students have probably had the impression that development studies is a diverse field, and students will still want to specialize in a particular aspect. I think it's important to have a broad perspective on understanding like the processes and outcomes and practices and theories of development, but then to kind of dive deeper into areas that students have particular interest in. So the courses that we regularly offer every year that allows for that specialization include migration, human rights, environmental politics, conflict resolution, project management, and innovation for inclusive development. And there's also an option for an internship as well. We also have some courses that are offered, but not always every year. So for example, last year we had a course on disaster management and another course on development economics. So like these courses will allow students to kind of explore their interest. And then a final part of our program, especially for the master's program, is that all students will have to prepare a research-based thesis. So that also allows the student to focus more deeply and build a cutting-edge knowledge on their particular area of interest. For some students, they enter our program already with a clear picture about what their interest is, like maybe on migration, for example. For other students, they might enter the course with one idea, but then move to another as they learn more about the field. And others enter not sure about how they want to specialize, but by the time it gets to the thesis, they've pretty much decided. So the thesis is also an opportunity to specialize.
All right, Ajahn Carl. You have been mentioning some core courses and then elective courses as well, which is a very diverse topics and also specializations. But how the program itself is trying to balance between theoretical and practical, given that we offer so many specializations and trained specializations as well. But how we kind of make sure that the practical perspective also being captured in this program.
Yeah, a very, very interesting question. I mean, we can debate on this in the course as well. The relative importance of theory and like studying actual cases and the practical applications. I mean, between the two in our program, if every master's program and PhD program has to engage with theory, and theory is important because it helps us critically understand and explain the world around us. But at the same time, if we only focus on theory, we are in the world of the abstract. It's not to say that there's not value in that, and for some, they prefer to focus more on that skill. But then the other side is, I mean, how can we see that theory as empowering to kind of understand and engage in cases and practical examples? So we try to aim for a balance. Obviously, if you just focus on the case studies and examples without theory, then you just end up describing things and not deeply understanding them. So we try and bring the two together. How do we do that within our program? The course is essentially, whatever the topic of the course is, we'll bring a theoretical underpinning to that topic and then combine it with case studies and examples. That's both by the lecturer, but also in class exercises. Like students are also asked through their essays and through their presentations and through group work to kind of bring a connection between the theories and ideas that are discussed on the course with how they can understand case studies, like either contemporary or past ones. We also, in every course that's taught on the program, the lead course coordinator will also invite guest lecturers that will bring particular specializations with them, whether they be practitioners or other scholars. And then in terms of engaging with cases, we also really try and get students outside the classroom. So we organize field trips inside and outside Bangkok, like a domestic field trip and an international field trip. And then, yeah, as I said already, I think also when it comes to students writing assignments, we pay a lot of attention to how the students engage with theory and with empirical case studies as well. So that's another way in which we try and balance between theory and practice.
Interesting, Ajahn Carl. I kind of also remember that we have so many diverse backgrounds of students, right? Like coming from the practical backgrounds, those who are already working, and then those who are jumping from bachelor's to master's, master to PhD, for example. I just probably you can share what kind of research methodologies, because coming from different backgrounds, kind of challenging as well to deliver similar understanding about research methodology, and then how the program is trying to deliver or to give some kind of tips and trick to do research in the program.
Okay, thanks. That's also a really good question. probably we can also divide, I think, between what happens in the classroom, like how things are taught, like the pedagogy, and then how research, how we encourage kind of research methods. So I'll just briefly start with the research methods, but then kind of turn to teaching and then back to research methods. So I mean, there's like the field, like research methods is its kind of own field. Like so we have a course on research methods. And in that course, it introduces research designs that are both qualitative and quantitative and kind of mixed methods approaches. So this is a very important course for the program, both for the master and the PhD, because research, a good quality research design is necessary to conduct good quality research and then to reach clear arguments and conclusions about whatever is being studied. But I think, as you mentioned, like I should have probably mentioned earlier, that I think a key strength of our program, and certainly an aspect that keeps the program very vibrant, is the students themselves. We have students from within the region, students from Thailand, students from other countries in Southeast Asia, from other countries in Asia, and then from other regions around the world. So students coming from different cultural backgrounds, different experiences. Some students have more experience in the world of work, some less so, and joining us straight from other programs. I think in the classroom, and this probably also reflects the way which programs are changing, like the internet has changed everything for a while now, and the classroom space should be a space for doing what you can't do online, like, and what you can't learn from books alone. So one kind of method of learning is, like, first of all, that we encourage critical thinking amongst our students, and then expressing that critical thinking through analyzing and debating issues on development in the classroom. So because we have a diverse cohort of students, that debate is also kind of quite revealing and a good way of learning and learning about ourselves and learning about the field of development studies. When I answered your first question about, well, there are many different ways of thinking about international development studies, it kind of then also shows why development studies has to be interdisciplinary. Like we can't just draw from international relations alone. Like we have, for example, if we're looking at geopolitics, we have to really kind of draw from different disciplines. So I think our course is interdisciplinary by design. Like the programs that we have, like development theory and practice or globalization, try and draw from different fields to kind of understand those phenomena. We also introduced transdisciplinary methods. So that means the way in which, like, researchers, whether they're scholars or other practitioners of research, work with other practitioners, like other people, whether it's like government officers or civil society people or communities, to co-produce research together. I think this is a really important change in the way in which knowledge production is thought about in the field of development studies. So applying knowledge co-production and is maybe quite challenging for a master's thesis, but we think it's really important that students understand the value of knowledge co-production and participatory approaches, things like participatory action research, and that becomes a part of the way in which they think about how development studies should be undertaken. I think, especially with your research, Hannah, there are also other emerging fields of research, like multi-species ethnographies. So kind of challenging the way that we think about social science methods as primarily being studying the social, to also studying human interactions with non-human things, both living and non-living. So we're engaging in those debates as well. I think, and the PhD students that are coming into our program also help the program build those new expertises as well. So maybe just to sort of wrap up on this, so in terms of the research methods, obviously method is important, but it's the research that we hope to achieve. So good quality research starts with good quality, good methods. And then our expectation is that by the end of either master's or PhD students graduating, that through their studies, they contribute to the field of international development studies knowledge through their thesis research. And that should be both empirically, but also furthering the ideas of development, so furthering theory as well.
Oh, that's totally agree. I'm also very happy to be part of this program because I think my research is kind of emerging, especially in Southeast Asia, but very lucky that the faculty members also able to accommodate the research interests and also trying to work together. Speaking about that, Ajahn Carl, I think we can move to the other discussions topic. So some prospective students also curious about the faculty and research strengths. Given that we are under the Faculty of Political Science, but we are not affiliated to any department of this faculty, which is like a special program. So what kind of expertise do the faculty members bring to the program? Because you've been also mentioning many times that we draw from various fields. So how does it look like in the program, Ajahn?
Okay, thanks. That's a good question, like how to understand the program's position within the faculty and how that's our strength. So, the Faculty of Political Science has 4 departments, which are international relations, sociology and anthropology, the Department of Government, and the Department of Public Administration. So each of those disciplines are kind of well established within the faculty, and also kind of key disciplines within social science. So development studies is a interdisciplinary field of studies. It doesn't fit neatly into any of those faculties, but rather our program connects with faculty members from each of those 4 fields to kind of bring that expertise in an interdisciplinary way into our program's courses. And also the faculty members in each of those 4 disciplines are available to be advisors to the thesis as well, or co-advisors if more than one advisor is thought necessary. So prospective students can have a look on both our website and also the website of the faculty to see the expertise. We have a lot of very high quality faculty members who are leading their fields in terms of research and are also actively teaching on their specializations in the faculty. It's probably also worth mentioning, though, within the faculty, there are also centers of excellence in research and sort of research centers that also connect to our program, or we can connect to them. So, for example, there's the Center for Social Development Studies. There's a link to CSDS on the MAIDS website. And then within CSDS, CSDS holds a Center of Excellence in Resource Politics and Social Development that is recognized by the university as kind of having a specialization in that field. Then there's also another research center which is outside of the faculty, but closely connects to our program because the adjunct that leads that center is also teaching our migration program. So there's a Center of Excellence on Migration under the ASEAN Research Center for Migration that very much our program benefits from in terms of the expertise there. There's also a new center, the Nelson Mandela Center for Conflict Resolution, Atrocity Prevention and Human Security, that a couple of our PhD students are also kind of working within. That center, I think, talks a lot to some of the current challenges, both in Southeast Asia and beyond, about questions of promoting peace and human security and how to deal with questions of conflict. So it's a difficult side of development studies, but an important one. And then also there's a UNESCO chair in resource governance and futures literacy. The CSDS has been a part of helping to form within the university. And I think this is like, we introduced this in the Politics of Public Policy course about the concept of futures literacy and futures thinking. Increasingly, the politics of the future affect the possibilities of the present. how we can think about the future differently can enable us to think about different possibilities in the present. It doesn't mean that we can outthink ourselves into a different future without thinking about other forms of action as well. But we need to be more reflexive about our relationship with the future. And I think that UNESCO Chair is kind of a university level initiative trying to encourage that way of thinking. And the fact that it emphasizes futures literacy, emphasizes the taught part, like building our capacity to engage with the future.
Okay, Jean-Carl, I think we've been very much lucky because we're having a lot of center of excellence, and then the professors are also part of the centers as well. But I think you kind of mentioned a little bit earlier about the engagement of students in those center of excellence. But are there any notable projects or research where the students can engage or are engaging currently, Ajahn?
Yeah. So it depends student by student. Many, I think probably all of our faculty members are actively engaged in research in their fields. So the students who want to work closely with a particular faculty member are able to approach those faculty members and see if they would like support in their projects. Like several of our PhD students have done so. Including Hannah, you've joined one of our research projects under a study on East Asian regionalism and world ecology. So that's kind of one way in which students can connect directly to faculty members. I think also we have ongoing programs, like there's a East-West Center collaboration supported by the Luce Foundation on climate change, agrarian change, conflict mitigation. Conflict and migration. So let me say that again: climate change, agrarian change, conflict and migration from Myanmar to Bangkok, that some of our students have been involved in. And then we have some PhDs that are also with a research project about the Salween Peace Park in Karen State or Kortule in Myanmar, which is in collaboration with Copenhagen University. So I think if students see that there's research ongoing that they'd like to be a part of, they can discuss directly with the scholars that are leading or supporting those research to see if their thesis could be contributing in some way, or if there's a need for research assistant. I find that also many of our master's students especially are very busy in completing the program requirements. So it's important to find a balance, but if there's a synergy between the students' interest and the research project, then we can develop that.
Right. So it's more like how both students and the professor are also communicating actively as well, right? I think yes. We've been going through deep and deeper discussions, but there's also another questions that is really important to address as well, Jean-Carl. It's more like into the student experience and career prospects, which is one of the main goals why some students are pursuing master's or PhD here in the program. But some of them who have no or less have less background of development studies, kind of questioning: am I suitable enough being a student here, or what kind of struggle will I have later on? So I mean, drawing from the backgrounds from the students that we have, what kind of students typically join the MAIDS-GRID program, Ajahn?
Oh, okay, very good question. So we have, the student cohort is typically diverse. Some students, first in terms of region, I would say typically around half to 2/3 are from within Southeast Asia, with like a balance between students from Thailand and then students from Myanmar, and then depending year by year also from Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, also from China. Then also kind of more widely across Southeast Asia, like ASEAN, so from Indonesia, the Philippines, so including yourself, Hannah, of course, from Indonesia. Then we also have students that join from other countries in East Asia, like from Japan, for example, from Korea, And then other regions, like we had students from Latin America, from the US, from different countries in Europe. So as I said before, like that kind of creates already a cultural diversity that leads to a very engaging program. There are many different potential career tracks within the field of development studies. So that also means that we have a diversity of students entering the program. Some are coming from civil society backgrounds, some have worked with governments, some have worked with the private sector, and also kind of differing degrees of experience. Some students may only have some like internship experience, for example, whereas others may already have worked for a number of years, even be like mid-career. We've had several students that kind of have reached a particular point in their career even later on and then joined the program. And again, like that creates an enriching experience. We encourage constructive discussion across cultures and ages and at different degrees of experience. And then, I mean, the students have different aspirations. So they also come from different fields. Like we have students that are coming more from a physical sciences field. I think it's more common that they come from social science because like we are a social science field. But as I said, like it's interdisciplinary. And I myself originally have a science background, a science and engineering background, but found a way to engage within international development studies. So yeah, like the kind of students that join are very diverse, both from different regions, different ages, different backgrounds.
That's correct. I think Ecological is one of the best example of product of international development studies. The engagement is between natural science and also social science as well. But speaking about the career prospects, Ajahn, how or what kind of career opportunities do MAIDS-GRID graduates usually pursue? Their academics or probably working for NGOs and others?
Yeah, very good question. So it also, I mean, obviously also depends on the student. Students so maybe students from within the region. Many students, I mean, some students even return to the work that they were doing before. They kind of had reached a point in their career where they wanted to kind of think a bit more deeply, like theorize a bit more what they're doing, but actually intended to go back to their original organization after graduating. So we have students like that. Students from within the region may continue to work within the region, like go back to the country that they were from, or like even stay within Bangkok and work with organizations that are based here. Some students also continue their kind of pathway in academia. So if they're studying on the master's program, at least a couple of our students each year then kind of go on to study PhD programs, either within the region, even within our program, or overseas. Students from outside the region, some of them go back home and work back home. Others use the program as an opportunity to kind of step into a career in Southeast Asia. So by studying in Bangkok, it's a way of then connecting to organizations that are based here and to then find a future career path with them. In terms of the fields, it's really quite diverse, as international development studies is. Some students, as you mentioned, work with civil society groups, whether they be local, national, or international. Other students work with international organizations like the UN. We've had students that then like transition into kind of diplomatic careers, like working with their Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Students who go in, especially graduating from our PhD program, students who then go into work in universities. So like, I think most of the students who have graduated from our PhD program so far have been able to find careers within academia, within Thailand or other countries that they're from. Some also work in the private sector or in development consulting. So the potential career paths are diverse. Many of our students have been successful in finding work within a reasonably quick period of time of graduating. So I think our program has a good reputation. in terms of the quality of students that are graduating.
Okay, so I think building from your explanation, so we have a very diverse alumni that are able to work in academia and then practical work as well, right, Ajahn? So I think it's going to be connected to the previous explanations about the connections. How does the program support the students to build the connections? I think it's not just about the Southeast Asian or regional connections, but also how we try to engage with the potential connection that probably can also support their future career.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very important part of finding a way forward, right? Whether it's about gaining advice on where there might be opportunities to find work in the future, or just finding connections as to kind of find a way into an organization, like get good advice. I mean, many of our lecturers, first of all, many of our program staff are kind of actively working in their fields, which what that means in practice is, as a researcher, that you are working within networks, like working in networks on migration or on environmental politics, as I do. So individual lecturers can help students make connections. If you take their courses, they will often invite guest lecturers that are practitioners or from other fields. So it's an opportunity to meet individuals directly and network. We encourage our students to join conferences and workshops. So in that sense, this is another opportunity for networking. There's a lot of events that happen on the campus, but also very nearby. For example, like Southeast Asia Junction is a very good example of a venue that regularly organizes events that are very, very topical and relevant to development studies. Students also have an opportunity, if they'd like to do an internship. And also the Innovation for Inclusive Development course is a project-based course. So it will allow the students to be outside of the university and kind of working with practitioners, whether it's like a local civil society organization or other practitioner. So yeah, network building, there's a lot of opportunity to do so through the program and being based in Bangkok.
Right, that's correct. I think we can move to another topic of discussions about the fieldwork and practical learning. Does the program offer fieldwork opportunities? I think you mentioned earlier as well, either local or international. So if so, what are the examples?
Yes, I mentioned earlier that it's important to get out of the classroom. We can learn some things in the classroom, but we learn a lot also by being out and about. So probably two of the main activities that we organize for being outside of the classroom are the domestic field trip and the international field trip. So in the first trimester for the master's program, there's the domestic field trip. This year we visited Chiang Mai, a northern city in Thailand, and we learnt about the concept and practices of the smart city in Mahia municipality. Then the second one is the international field trip. So in the international field trip, we obviously go to another country, pretty much in mainland Southeast Asia. So for example, for this year, we're visiting Cambodia. We'll first visit Phnom Penh and then Siem Reap. So when we do those international field trips, we organize different types of meetings, like with think tanks, with civil society groups, visiting communities, try to meet government as well, to kind of learn about different aspects of development in another context outside of Thailand. This year we go to Cambodia, as I said. Past years we visited Laos, Vietnam. Before 2021 with the coup, we visited Myanmar. We've also visited Yunnan province of China 1 year as well. So aside from those kind of two field trips that are kind of program-wide, some courses also organize individual field trips. For example, the migration field trip has a field trip to some place where migration could be understood better. So like, for example, visiting the Myanmar-Thai border to understand, like to hear directly from organizations working there. This year also, the disaster management course also organized the field trip to visit disaster management practitioners outside of Bangkok.
Ajahn, I'm sorry for the noise background. But if you could elaborate more on how the designs of the field trip looks like, for example, like how do they engage with the international organizations? Do we have like a talks or just working together with them? Or how does it look like?
So the typical field trip, we travel as a group, and then we visit different organizations. But so it might be development practitioners, it might be NGOs, it might be international organizations. So it might be through lectures, but it's also about having meetings and workshops. I think outside of the field trips, like the students can also join meetings and workshops and conferences and have their own networking. So kind of engaging with development practitioners, NGOs, and others, there are many opportunities through the program to do so.
It's very interesting. And I think we are coming to the very last questions that we gathered. It's about future directions of the program. Could you try to give us some explanations about how has the program evolved over the years? Because we've been established like for kind of a long time comparing to other programs in the region at least. And then what kind of plans for the future in terms of curriculum, partnerships, and focus areas that MAIDS-GRID program would like to overthinking further?
Thank you. So, I mean, this is also a test of how we can think about the future. Like, what should the program be doing? I mean, I think especially because, you know, as an academic program, I mean, as a program that is taught within an academic context, the program is engaging in the politics of knowledge of development studies. You know, so we have to think, we have a responsibility to think about what we teach in the program, what types of knowledge are building the type of world that we think should be a good future. And the students would also agree with us on, right? Because in the end, the course is the students. Like without students being interested to study international development studies, there is no course. So we're kind of thinking about you know, also what students have concerns on that, you know, reflect what the future of the world could become. I think in the field of international development studies, some of the areas that we see ourselves as like already engaged in and wanting to deepen our engagement in, I think one is decolonizing thinking, like in terms of Southeast Asia studies or development studies. So this has become a kind of has a lot of momentum in many programs in international development studies now to kind of critically reflect on the types of knowledge that constitute the meaning of development and ask where do they come from and how do they shape the way in which development is approached. Being a program that is based in Southeast Asia and having like many students that are from the region and thinking critically about what happens on the ground, I think that many of our kind of past thesis and our kind of lecturers and the debates that we have in the class engage in decolonizing thinking already. And what it really means is drawing out situated knowledges and practices rather than trying to universalize the meaning and means of development. So I think that our program wants to foreground that even more within the program itself and the students that we'd hope would be joining. And then related to that, I think, is kind of thinking about concepts and practices of post-development. You know, so rather than thinking about kind of universalizing the best practice of development coming from everywhere, we're very interested in kind of local innovation and practices and what could be learned from that in its diversity, like not saying that development means the same everywhere, but kind of recognizing that different places have different understandings. I mean, just for one example, last year we visited Safedis Farm on the outskirts of Bangkok as one of our field visits. Safedis Farm is a sort of new urban farm on the outskirts of the city that's basically trying to build a different type of urban food system and a different type of ecological community within the context of the city. You know, so that's a very interesting practice of development that's a very different way of thinking about the meaning of well-being in terms of relationship with food and in terms of thinking about community. I think maybe one final direction that at least some of the faculty members are thinking about is rethinking development beyond a kind of human-centric understanding. So bringing more concepts of ecological justice, like sensitizing ourselves to the relationship between people and nature. So we might see that, for example, in the very active debates on the rights of nature. So I think those are three directions that I see the program moving in. We still embrace many other ways of thinking about development, as we've discussed earlier on. But I think those are kind of three important fields. And probably, I think it's important that the program is responsive to the interests and concerns of our students. So, also thinking about the program itself, like we organize regular student executive meetings. There are student representatives. So kind of making sure that the program is accountable to the students and what the students hope the program will be is actually important for the present year, but it's also important for the future. Like the students are also making the program for the future too.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time and then answering all the questions. We still have a lot of questions, but I think we're going to address those questions in another sessions with different person because it's more technical questions as well. So for everyone, thank you very much for joining. And then we're still accepting the applications until 4 April 2025. So don't miss the deadline. Once again, Giancarlo, thank you very much. And I'm Hannah. See you in the next sessions.
Thanks so much, Hannah.